All right. Hey, friends. Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. And I'm streaming live. Today is Monday. It's March 31st, March 31st, 2025. And we are right on the cusp, not only of April Fool's Day, but basically of Trump making fools of people who believe that his tariffs are the right thing for our economy. So I'm titling this video Tariffs, What's So Great About Them? And I want you to tell me what's so great about them. There are still a few people who are just straggling behind with their knowledge of history about tariffs and how disastrous they are. And I really want to hear from you or those who believe that tariffs are going to be the right thing for our country. Now, I want to share my screen because there were a couple of headlines that grabbed my attention today. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. Oh, there we are. And I look forward to getting your comments. But let's do this. I wanted to look at, well, here's the Wall Street Journal. This is Robert Lighthizer, and he was Trump's former US trade representative. And some of you sent me a long interview that he had with Tucker Carlson. And I know there are plenty on my channel here that are concerned about Tucker Carlson and the role that he plays and whether or not he is, a mouthpiece for propaganda, shaping the narrative and so forth. And I kind of made a joke that I think just Trump and Tucker are the only two that actually believe in tariffs because Robert Lighthizer made the rounds and he was trying to prop up this very flimsy idea for improving our economy and bringing back manufacturing jobs. I've done a few videos already with deep dives on all of this. So I'm not going to rehash all the old stuff, but I'm going to bring you some data. Let's start with this. Former US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer doesn't deny that President Trump's protectionist policies, that means tariffs, trying to protect US manufacturing, but there are other ways that actually work, like reducing corporate taxes and removing payroll taxes and allowing for 100% depreciation on, in manufacturing facilities. There are other ways of doing it that actually work to protect US manufacturing, which, by the way, we are well represented in every major sector except for apparel and textiles, but those are not really, national security issues. But Trump had protectionist policies in 2018. Some people don't know that Trump imposed tariffs of up to 50% on certain countries back in 2018. And here's the result. It reduced economic growth by 20%. Let me repeat that. Trump's policies reduced economic growth by 20% in their first full year of implementation. Nor does this individual who made the rounds with Tucker Carlson, does he deny that manufacturing output fell? Yes, by 4%. It was lower at the start of the pandemic, the pandemic, than when tariffs were announced in 2018. So manufacturing output fell. Economic growth was reduced by 20%. Here are a couple of other headlines. Trump's tariffs are no emergency. The president is invoking a law that does not give him power to impose sweeping tariffs. And I agree with this. I can do a separate video on the breakdown of the legalities of it. The purpose of this video is to share some hard data with you about 2018 and what happened then. All right. This was back in January, right after Trump was inaugurated. And there was an opinion piece from the Wall Street Journal saying that they oppose the use of tariffs as a general tool for economic policy. Now, I actually have a Substack here, and I spent all weekend and then some researching and writing this for you. And it is going to be actually published for you tomorrow. So I have a Substack over at peggyhall.substack.com, and doing these videos on the tariffs. I was telling my husband, it's like doing a term paper every day. I do a lot of research, I gather the data, and I actually want to share this in a well, the snark sneaks in a little bit, but a relatively non-snarky manner for people who really want to just get the nuts and bolts about tariffs. So I've already done, in fact, I'm doing a series. It's called The Tough Truth About Tariffs. And it started out with Caroline Levitt and how she is ignorant on tariffs. She said that the foreign companies pay the tariffs. Well, I think by now everyone knows that that's not the case. The foreign company, the foreign country, the foreign manufacturer, the exporter does not pay the tariff. The tariff on the item is collected at the border and it goes to the Department of the Treasury of the United States. So it's kind of like a paycheck for Trump and others in the administration. It does not reduce our taxes. In fact, it increases our taxes. There are taglines such as tariffs are tax on your grocery bill, or tariffs increase taxes. Tariffs are a tax on the consumer without congressional approval. In the United States, in the Constitution, remember that that old document that I'm striving to uphold and maintain and educate people about. The Constitution states that only the Congress has the right, the legal authority to levy taxes, duties, and tariffs. So what has Trump done? He announced an emergency, an electric emergency, as I understand it. I'll dig into that into an upcoming video, in order to invoke an older law from like the 1970s saying that he could take measures like against our foreign enemies. So it's a little far-fetched. He's done it in the past. He got away with it. It looks like he's poised to do it again. And of course, the stock market has tanked. But what I want to do is share with you some hard facts and data. So as I say, I spent all day writing this Substack for you. And what I want to do is I want to read for you a few of my notes so that I can stay on track here. So I titled this, Trump's tariffs, tell me what you like about them, and be sure to bring the receipts, meaning bring me the data and the evidence and the facts. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with you right here. So I think that possibly it's only Tucker and Trump who believe that tariffs are a good thing. Let me share my screen and I'll show you some data that I got from a website called Statista that I am actually subscribe to, and you can subscribe for free. Statista has all sorts of statistics. And this one says, this just came out, and it says, spending weakens as tariff impact looms. So we're talking about the here and now, and I'll go back into history to the 2018 disastrous results in just a moment. But right now, the reason I can say that only Trump and Tucker believe that tariffs are a good thing is because look at this. The majority thinks that tariffs will hurt the average American. So here we've got, and this was a few days ago, this was March 18th, 2025. So 28% of people, of Republicans or Republican leaning, have said that they believe tariffs will, help. That's the helping. And then the no effect is about 14% for Republicans, and hurting is about, 36%. And Democrats are very much saying that this is going to hurt Americans. But overall, you can see that both Democrats and Republicans, all adults, do believe that tariffs will hurt the average American. Why? Because they had to pay out of their own pocketbook several years ago, back in 2018. Right now, Americans are spending less and saving more as tariffs loom. Why would that be? Well, people are concerned about their job, and I'm going to talk about how tariffs actually reduce manufacturing jobs and they actually harm the economy. So people are also looking at what's happening to the stock market, which is tanking. And even if you don't have money in the stock market, the stock market is companies who are in the stock market are affected by that. And those who rely on, for example, maybe they have dividends that are coming in and they live on that money, they are going to be affected as well. So unlike the tech bros and the billionaires, I have nothing to gain from talking about Trump's tariffs or bashing them, as some of you have said. In fact, I'm actually losing here. I'm losing subscribers who don't want to face the fact. And no, I don't care about the subscriber count. What I care about is helping as many people as I can. So thank you in advance for sharing this video, for sharing the information, for taking the time to stick with me throughout this video and to read my Substack, which is free over at peggyhall.substack.com. And you can also increase your knowledge by watching my Truth About Tariffs. Actually, I started to talk about that. This is my fourth video in the series. I talked about Caroline Leavitt being exactly wrong on tariffs. Then I did a very detailed deep dive on nearly an hour video called Clearing Up the Confusion About Tariffs with Facts. And then I did a shorter video called Trump is Wrong About Tariffs. And I broke down the 5 most common arguments, such as we need to bring back manufacturing and it helps the economy and we need to protect our companies and we need it for, security, and we want to stop fentanyl from crossing the border. Still haven't figured that one out. So I did a deep dive on that already. I won't rehash it for you here, but I will have, you can go to my playlist and I'll have all of those for you. So I might be alone in my fascination of international politics and policies and economic systems that actually create the greatest amount of prosperity for the greatest amount of people. And that has been our capitalist system here in the United States. More importantly, and more specifically, based on free trade without tariffs. Free trade is so important to the international economy, which is why there are all sorts of trade organizations and trade negotiations. If tariffs worked, and I want you to hear me on this very simply, if tariffs worked, why not 100% tariff on every single country, on every single product, on every single company that's sending their products to the United States that we're importing? Why not 100% tariff? Because they don't work. That's why they're always negotiated down. All right. People have said, well, we're just doing retaliatory tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Well, friends, the United States started first. If you want to be like the juvenile or, children have those, he started it. Well, the United States started it. Them's the facts. So anyway, I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's degree in international policy studies, and I've studied international trade and economics, international law, all that stuff, because I'm fascinated by it. So I dusted off the books and I rolled up my sleeves. And like I said, this is like doing a term paper every single day. I mean, the amount of content that you're telling me I'm producing, I mean, it is quite amazing. And I'm grateful to do so. And I'm grateful to have you on board and sharing this as well. Many people have told me that they're confused by international trade and international economics, and that makes sense. It's not something that a lot of people are interested in, and they don't really want to take the time to learn about it. So let me just simplify and clarify and identify some of the facts and evidence that we can go on. And that's what's missing with a lot of these talking heads. People are sending me videos of people saying tariffs are the best thing ever, but they never bring the receipts. So please bring the receipts. Now, many people trust Trump to do the right thing. And I understand, I really do understand that people want to believe that Trump is playing 5D chess. Still don't know what that means, but they believe that that's what he's doing and that he's just bloviating without really intending to slap these tariffs on imports coming into the US. The problem is with the bloviating is that it is already having an impact. Think about it. Let's say that you are a furniture manufacturer and you create handmade furniture, and there's a certain type of soft wood that you get from Canada, and it is a great price and you have access to it, and the supply chains are open, and you've been working with this supplier for some time and you're loyal to that supplier. You've already created the relationship. If you've ever been in a company, worked in a company, you know about supply chains and manufacturing relationships, and having that all in place is actually more efficient if we want to talk about efficiency than having to start from scratch and get all those contracts in place. So let's say you've already got your lumber supplier from Canada and you are able to create these beautiful, custom made furniture pieces, and you've got an Etsy store, and maybe you go to the farmer's market, and maybe you supply some hotels. Just giving you an example. And suddenly you're hearing about these tariffs and people are placing orders, but you don't really want to take the orders because the lumber that you're getting from Canada is suddenly now going to be 30, 40, 50% more. And you're concerned about how you can continue to make a profit and stay in business and still deliver the quality product to your customers without going out of business because the price is too high. That's just an example I thought about off the top of my head. And you can extrapolate that to any kind of manufacturer or retailer or even a service provider. So when these things become more expensive for you to have the raw materials, suddenly this manufacturer says, you know what, I was going to hire 2 more furniture builders, and I'm not going to do that now because I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to keep the business going. So there are 2 jobs now that are going to be left unfilled. And again, extrapolate that, times that by, multiples for jobs that are no longer going to be advertised or filled because these companies are thinking, I think back to 2018 and what happened. Manufacturing dropped, the economy tanked, and I don't want to go through that again. So this is the problem with bloviating. Let me know if you have any questions about that, or if you still think it's a smart strategy. It's not a smart strategy. Actually, it's the exact opposite. So let's go back now to 2018 and let's talk about the facts and the data and the evidence. So Trump imposed tariffs between 30 to 50% on solar panels and washing machines. All right. There was a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum. There were separate escalated tariffs on all sorts of imports coming from China. And that led to a full-blown trade war, a trade war in which there were no victors, only victims, namely you and me, as I'm going to share with you the hard facts in just a moment. So retaliatory tariffs. Did you catch what I said there? The US started it. And retaliatory tariffs were inflicted and imposed upon US imports, namely by India, China, and Canada. Canada and Mexico, for obvious reasons, are our largest trading partners. We share the geography with them. And I've spoke in previous videos about how integrated our economies are, believe it or not, because of the back and forth imports and exports of parts that are then used into finished products that are then exported back. And it's very difficult in this day and age to extrapolate that and to go back, turn our country's economy back, a couple of decades. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to the stock market, and it doesn't make sense to producers and manufacturers, and it doesn't make sense to consumers because we're the ones left holding the bag. So American manufacturers and farmers in particular, because the United States is one of the world's largest exporters of agricultural products. Yes, that means our American farmers were hurt. And what happened? Well, there were more tax subsidies going to the farmers to try to take care of the very harmful effects that those tariffs resulted in. Kind of going in the wrong direction, if you ask me. So exports also slowed, because the companies could now, the countries could no longer afford with these retaliatory tariffs. So our exports slowed, and we are huge exporters. As I said, not only we export steel, we export energy, we export everything, friends. That's why it's international trade. It's a give and take. And I don't know why Trump is fixated on the balance of trade. It doesn't really mean that much. When it doesn't mean much to us as the consumers, and it doesn't mean that much to our manufacturers. All they care is that their product is being sold. It doesn't matter to them if it's being sold in the United States or in India or in Canada or in Mexico. That is the nature of our world. So some now are concerned that Trump's tariffs, for example, could jack up car prices by about $10,000. How do you like them apples? Well, history shows that tariffs are disastrous. Let me share my screen here, and we'll take a look at the Substack, and I will give you some of these graphs and charts and data. And also, the Substack will have links for you. So this is my draft, and it will be coming out for you tomorrow. So economists overwhelmingly agree that tariffs raise prices and harm an economy. For example, 95% of American Economics Association members have repeatedly agreed that tariffs and import quotas usually reduce the general economic welfare. Here is a chart that breaks it down. This was from the University of Chicago, a recent survey. Imposing tariffs results in a substantial portion of the tariffs being borne by consumers of the country that enacts the tariffs through the price increases, meaning you and me are going to foot the bill. And it's basically a tax that was not passed by Congress. That really bothers me. You're going to pay taxes, let it go through the proper channels. So 52 plus 43% said, yes, I agree. The one economist who disagreed appeared to misunderstand the question. Remember, tariffs are not paid by the exporter or the foreign country or the foreign company or the foreign manufacturer. Tariffs are paid by the importer. That means the individual or the manufacturer or the producer who is receiving the product. And guess what? When those products like the solar panels and the washing machines are slapped with that 30 to 50% tariff, do you think the washing machine company is just going to eat that cost? That'd be a big NO. That cost is passed on down to the consumer. Now, that's why the saying goes, tariffs are a tax on your grocery bill and everything else you buy. Now, you may say it's not a problem, Peggy. I'm not going to buy those machines made in Korea. Keep in mind, you can buy everything you want to in the United States. There is not a manufacturing sector in the United States that is not represented. I did a deep dive on this in my nearly 60-minute video called Clearing Up the Confusion with Facts, and I broke it down with showing you all of the lumber manufacturers and the aluminum and the steel and energy and gas and anything you can think of is produced in the United States. So you can already buy American if you want to. So that's all well and good. But when the component parts, so like I'm not going to buy the washing machine made in China or Korea in this case, and I have like a Maytag from the United States, but think about the component parts. So a lot of these tariff costs are hidden because there are raw materials that are coming in. I gave you the example of the lumber coming from Canada and the fellow hypothetically, and you can use other examples like that as well. So the finished products using materials that have these tariffs on them are going to be higher as well. Now, it gets even worse. So there is a ripple effect, like falling dominoes, that affects every part of the economy with these trade wars. So think about it. As prices go up, consumers buy less. That means less is being produced. And there is an entire import industry in the United States to the tune of about 21 million jobs. So when imports are slashed, those people are out of jobs. I give the example of someone owning a warehouse where the products come off the ship and they go in the warehouse until they're transported by the truck drivers. And when the imports go down, the warehouses are empty, the truck drivers don't have any goods to transport, and it actually negatively impacts the import sector as well. But let's just talk about even the export sector. Now that there are reciprocal or retaliatory tariffs, now people aren't going to be wanting to buy American cars or whatever else that we are exporting, agricultural goods, for example. So that means more people out of work. So it has the domino effect of harming the economy. This has been proven by the historical record since the Silk Road back in the early days of trade with spices and silk. It was called that because China had the textiles and apparently still do. And in Asia, they had the spices and the teas that England didn't have. So they wanted international trade to have products that they couldn't produce. My hubby and I love Vermont maple syrup. I hate to tell you, but you can't produce Vermont maple syrup in California or in Florida. And last I checked, you can't grow artichokes in Vermont either. So when we bring it down to a more local basis, we're already trading between states as well. So that is how it works. All right. Again, this is not just economic theory. Businesses go out of business because of tariffs. I think you're understanding this now, and you're not falling for the propaganda and the 5D chess because the facts are speaking for themselves. So let me continue with the facts. 1 year into Trump's tariffs of 2018, There was an analysis done by MarketWatch and the Tax Foundation, and they concluded that Trump's 2018 tariffs amounted to one of the largest tax increases in history. Should I repeat that? Trump's tariffs resulted in the largest tax increase in history without congressional approval. Them are pretty rotten apples, friends. So remember, only Congress can levy those tariffs and taxes. So Trump's tariffs were a runaround to put more money into the Department of the Treasury. Yes, that's where the money goes. Tariffs are paid at the border by the importer directly to the Department of the Treasury. And you ain't going to get your goods until that's paid. So when Trump says tariffs are paid by the foreign country, no, he's exactly wrong. Is he ignorant? Is he lying? I don't know, but he's wrong. That I do know. So by the way, the fella in charge of the Department of the Treasury, the new Secretary Treasury, let me check my notes here. He is none other than the Soros. Yes, that's Soros, George Soros. Yeah, him. He was the manager of the George Soros hedge fund. His name is Scott Bessent, or Bessent. It's a French name. He's of French extraction, and he is the current Secretary of the Treasury. He's the one that's going to be holding out his hands for you and me and the importers to put the money in at the border when these products come in. Now, he's a multi-millionaire, from, close to a billionaire, I think, at this point. This fellow is, and I have nothing against billionaires when they've gotten their money ethically and haven't harmed others in the process. I actually have no problem with people making money honestly and ethically. So this multi-millionaire Secretary of the Treasury that Trump has nominated and who has now been confirmed, he also got a couple of cool billions. Yeah, couple of cool billions from none other than Georgie Soros. Gave the Secretary of the Treasury, before he was the Secretary of the Treasury, a couple $1 billion to start his own hedge fund. So just to let you know that they're buddies. So you really think that George Soros and his hedge fund manager, Scott Bessent, they have your and my best interests at heart with these tariffs? I didn't intend to do a comedy show tonight, friends. Oh, by the way, this guy, the Secretary of the Treasury, he's the one that opened up the Department of the Treasury system and records and gave it to your favorite Martian, Elon Musk. Yes, King Musk, I think that's his name. He's the transhumanist animal torturer. He goes by that name also. And he got access to your personal financial information. How much money you made, your bank account records, whether or not you paid taxes, how much you paid, what your business expenses were. Yeah, that all went to King Musk through Bessent, who has his hands out for the tariffs. How do you like them apples, friends? Pretty rotten apples. Now, I'm sure your favorite Martian, Ellen, would never do anything with that data that would give Ellen a sort of competitive edge over the competitors and use your data for power and control. No, never. That would never happen. Oh, so you want a deeper dive? I did a 55-minute video all about this, about clearing up the confusion with facts. But let me share with you the hard data. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and we'll take a look at this. Following Trump's 2018 tariffs. All right, here we go. 2018 tariffs. The cost for all items rose the highest since 2011 by nearly double the average rate. Friends, would you share this video with people who still don't get it? And look, I understand, I happen to love this stuff. Not everybody does, but it's simple. Tariffs are a tax on the consumer. Here's the evidence. Following Trump's 2018 tariffs, the cost for all items rose the highest since 2011, meaning there is kind of, a little bit with inflation and so forth. It rose 2.3%, marking the largest advance since the 3.0 rise in 2011. And you've got food prices increased and everything else. Trump's 2018 tariffs reduced your income and adversely affected the GDP. Some studies also concluded that the tariffs adversely affected Republicans in the elections. Let's take a look at this, shall we? Hard data about Trump's disastrous 2018 tariffs. I'll probably do a second video just calling this out on its own, since it's a little bit later in our broadcast here. The dramatic rise in U.S. import tariffs between 2018 and 2019 lowered exports and employment in the U.S. manufacturing sector. I rest my case. Is this what you really want? No, what you're telling me you want is national security and bring manufacturing back to the U.S. There are different ways of doing it. I've talked about this in detail. And you do this by reducing corporate taxes, by allowing for 100% depreciation, for having other incentives. And this can be done state by state in the areas where they want to have these manufacturing plants. And you can't just get a manufacturing plant up and running. It costs a lot. I don't know if Soros is going to invest in it like he invested in the Department of the Treasury's secretary's hedge fund. Here you go. This was 2018. The effect of the 2018-2019 trade war tariffs. The GDP dropped, the full-time job equivalents dropped, and this is what the tariffs looked like back in 2018. I'll have this in my Substack so you can study it further. Now, I've got, look at this whole list, all of these bullet points. I'm not even going to read them all to you. They will be in the Substack. There are, I would say, about a dozen of these reports and analysis that were done by economists. And I'll just give you a highlight. There were, you can't make this up. There were greater losses in the steel manufacturing industry because of the tariffs in the United States. The tariffs reduced steel manufacturing jobs. Here's the hard data, friends. All right. A March 28, 2018 survey of 43 economic experts revealed that a 0% tariff on U.S. steel and aluminum would improve the Americans' welfare. It just goes on and on and on, that free trade is what improves economies. Friends, let me share with you this tweet from Trump back in 2018. I don't think he's calling himself this anymore. He said, "I am a tariff man. When people or countries come in to raid the great wealth of our nation, I want them to pay for the privilege of doing so. It will always be the best way to max out our economic power." Well, it certainly maxed it out in the wrong turn. We are right now taking in billions in tariffs. Make America rich again. So let's take a look at this. He says, when people or countries come in to raid the great wealth of our nation. All right, friends, let's break this down. You are a retailer, you own a little store, and you've got people coming in and buying things from you, and they're giving you money, and you're giving them the product or the service. Are they raiding you? Are they taking advantage of you? No, they've engaged in commerce. They gave you money and you gave them a product. So I don't understand how other countries buying our products is taking advantage of us and raiding our nation of its wealth. It's the exact opposite. They're actually buying things from us. And think about it. With the amount of money, not you, but the others are spending at the dollar store buying all that Chinese stuff, with all that money that China's getting from its little plastic doodads and party goods and all whatever they're selling at the dollar store, now they have money. They have dollars. Guess what they do with the dollars? They buy our stuff, our American stuff. So that's the nature of, that's why it's called trade. It's a two-way street. Trump wants a one-way street. So people will say, Peggy, he's a multimillionaire. He was in real estate. Yeah, he borrowed that money. Okay, he got mortgages from banks and he had bankruptcies. And people are saying, oh, you think you know more than Trump? Yes, I do when it comes to tariffs. And I just showed you why. Oh my gosh, you guys. All right. So he's a tariff man and he wants countries to pay for the privilege of raiding the great wealth of our nation. Countries don't pay for it, friends. It's the individual. All right. So a year into the tariffs with obvious disastrous results, guess what happened? Can you take a wild guess? Trump changed his tune. He negotiated the favorable trade with Canada and Mexico because it was so disastrous for our country. He could only stick with it for about a year. Now, sadly, Brandon, the robot in chief of the previous administration, my husband says, if Biden's a robot, AI has a long way to go. So he kept some of those tariffs going, unfortunately. We should really get rid of them. Now, going back, you want to go back 100 years? Let's go back 100 years. Okay, back to the 1920s and the early 1930s. Republicans passed record high tariffs, and that everyone basically can point to that is what worsened the Great Depression. So you tell me, what's so great about tariffs? I want to hear. I'm actually going to look at the comments here. Let me give you a few things. What's great about tariffs? Is it that they increase the price of consumer goods? Is that the good part? Or that they decimate the import industry to the tune of about 21 million jobs? Or is it because tariffs drive up inflation? Is that the good part? Or is it because we lose manufacturing jobs in the wake of tariffs? Is that the good thing? And exports drop to other countries, so overall manufacturing is hit, including in the steel industry. Is that the good part? Or is it the good part that that tariffs are passed along as a tax to the consumer? I can't figure out what the good part is. So you tell me. Here's what we could do instead of tariffs. All right. You can negotiate beneficial trade policies with our trading partners, our largest ones in particular, Mexico, China. And guess who else is tops on the list? Oh, yes. Who's that? Switzerland. Guess what we're importing? Now, I wouldn't mind having a tariff on those. That's a tariff I could get behind. All right. The other thing we could do is we could focus on what the U.S. does best. Our robust agricultural sector, we are exporting energy, we're exporting steel, we export everything, my friends, and we are the world's leader. We have a trade surplus in our exports of services, such as travel, financial, consulting, and so forth. So those are pretty good apples. We could also prepare for true national security concerns, not worrying about importing apparel and textiles from India and Vietnam. That's not a national security issue. So in certain industries, you could bolster them by stockpiling certain materials. And I think my approach is quite clever. Like, let's use the resources of other countries so we don't use up our own strategic resources. Makes sense to me. I've covered this in great detail, friends. I'm having a little too much fun on a Monday live here. And most importantly, Congress could pass tax reforms, which have been done in the past, to allow, for example, 100% bonus depreciation. And if you are an accountant or you have an accountant or you have ever done depreciation, maybe you've got some investment properties, or whatever the case may be, you understand depreciation in a business and you can benefit more rather than dragging it out over decades. That has helped the economy in years past. There could also be a reduced corporate tax rate for companies in the United States, for domestic manufacturers, that would immediately provide a boost to the US manufacturing, particularly in the production of business equipment and things like that. And that is not going to harm the consumer or the companies. So think about that. An immediate reduction in the taxes. What does that mean? Well, I'm a business owner. And imagine if I had a reduction in taxes, I could actually hire somebody to do all my social media. I could hire somebody to do the research. I could hire somebody to edit my videos and all of that because I would have money in my pocket. Now that person would have a job and they would have money and maybe they would go out to dinner. And then the person that served them is going to get a higher tip and she's not going to be laid off because people are actually out eating at restaurants. The economy is so simple to understand. It's what we deal with day in, day out, every single one of us. So don't be stymied. Don't be mystified. Don't feel that it's too complicated for you to understand. I broke it down for you here and I will continue to do so. And I want to take a look at your comments. And I actually am going to share my screen and we'll take a look together. And I do appreciate you staying through this video as I've covered all of this in detail. So there we have it. Tariffs, what's so great about them? I might have to change. I think I'll do a second video about what's terrible about tariffs. And let's see if we have anyone or who we have here. Trump should eliminate income taxes and bring back the gold standard. That's what Patriot Girl says. I love that. President Trump is talking to NK. Who's NK? Am I missing that? Okay, Sirius, let's listen to this. Here's a different perspective. Sirius says tariffs are a very good tool, and Trump is using them exactly as they were intended. All right, Sirius, bring me some of your evidence. Bring me the receipts, because I just showed you how disastrous they are. I love to hear different perspectives, especially when there is evidence and a rationale behind them. David says, we let them charge us tariffs as they have for years. David, that's why there are trade negotiations, and there are trade representatives, and those are retaliatory tariffs that they put on the United States after we put on tariffs. And it just harms everyone. It doesn't matter whether or not they charge us tariffs. What we can control is the tariffs that we charge on other countries. And that has been shown throughout history to be beneficial when you reduce the tariffs. So watch the video again, and you'll see the evidence of that. Okay, let's see. Don't Step in the Grease says, enjoy your $7 bread. Dawn says, my comments are deleted live. YouTube likes to delete comments, especially if you leave links. Don't leave links. Those get deleted by YouTube. Valerie says, we are having companies moving back, expanding since Trump is back. That is good news, Valerie. I would like to have info on that so I can cover it on this channel. And then let's make sure they aren't hit by these tariffs, the results of those. Get rid of the income tax, Mary says, if Mr. Trump wants to make everything better for everyone. David says, no one imports our farm products. Well, that's an incorrect statement. And you can do a very simple search, and you can see that we are the world's, if not the leader, among the world's leader in exporting farm products. So that is incorrect. And he says, I'm playing 1D chess. Bring me the receipts, David. Show me. Tell me where you're getting that info, because it's not there. Mary says, good for you on your eagerness for the deep dives. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Chrysler is going to reopen its plant. Good to hear. I don't know that has. Patriot Girl says the U.S. has no manufacturing. Patriot Girl, watch my video called, let me come off the screen share. Watch my video called the Clearing Up the Confusion, because I give you all of the manufacturing that we have in the United States. So I don't know where you heard that, because the opposite is true. We are very robust in every sector of manufacturing in the United States. So I'm not sure where people are getting these mistaken ideas, because that's a mistaken idea. And it's probably, I don't know, on social media or maybe on the news. Seraphim said, my friend got laid off today. Her employer was a U.S. marketing agency whose only client is Toyota. There's a perfect example. Why don't the jobs that are in importing count? Why are we going to be discriminating against people who work in the import sector? That's not right. I mean, the economy should be for us all, and we should all be represented. Okay, Joan says, if I had to bet on who knows more about economics, Trump or you, I'd bet on Trump. Well, Joan, did you watch the video? Maybe that was early on in the video, because I just showed you that he calls himself a tariff man, and he thinks that the other countries pay those tariffs. And I just showed you how disastrous his policies were. They were so disastrous that he had to reverse them. So I'd bet on me. I don't think he has a master's degree in international policy. I'm not going by degrees. I'm going by knowledge. And he has shown himself to be lacking in the knowledge. I guess our kids are going to have to make our own parts. I don't know what that means. Thank you. Negron says, the Most High bless you. Thank you very much. Those are left-sided articles. Okay, Joan, you can email me, support@thehealthyamerican.org. And I got my information from the U.S. Department there are actually, I have it in my previous Substack, and I can tell you exactly where I got all of my data. I have done my research very broadly. So Joan, you can send me your research and links to support at thehealthyamerican.org. That's why I'm asking for the receipts. Nobody has them. Nobody has them but me. Okay, Renee says, Peggy, I heard Bobby the Bamboozler is starting up an anti-Semitic task force. Did you know? I'm sure you do. Yeah, what does that have to do with public health? Very strange. Patriot Girl says it's a health issue. Okay, let me see. Maybe I'm too early in the comments. Let me go farther down. BA says, why are you always so negative now? Is that for me? Am I negative? I was smiling and laughing throughout the video. I actually brought you fact. I think I'm very encouraging and positive, and I shared with you actual solutions that are better than tariffs. Trump's the negative one because he wants to harm you with the tariffs. So I'm the positive one, sharing solutions, and Trump's sharing, how do you put it, wrong sayings? How do you say it without, he's not lying, he's telling tales? How do you put that? Wireless says, we love you, Peggy. I love you too, even those who don't get it. That's why I'm here day in, day out. Patriot says, Peggy is a realist. I love it. Nissan is discussing moving production from Mexico to the US. Nothing wrong with that. And there might be some that are considering moving out of the US to Mexico. Hopefully not. Don says, Peggy sees through Trump as many of us do now. Okay. And Saint Earth says, I exist in a healthy American reality. You guys, I have the best audience on YouTube, even the naysayers. I welcome them all. Most of you are yaysayers because you want to learn, you want to increase your knowledge, you actually care about the data and the facts. You bring really interesting perspectives to consider, and you do so politely without getting down into the gutter. So I really appreciate that. I welcome the naysayers. Hop on board. I love nothing more than to continue to share my information, to identify and sort of simplify and teach about this because it happens to be something that I'm fascinated about. So I'm not done yet. And we'll see what happens when when Wednesday rolls around. I guess that's the deadline. And I will also bring more content for you on this tomorrow, since so many of you are appreciating the time that I put in to present this in a positive, optimistic, uplifting, encouraging manner. I actually, years ago when I was a teacher, people said, Peggy, you are far too cheerful. You're not serious enough. So it's funny that people say, a person said that I was negative. Hey, people reflect. How does that go? They project what they are. I guess that happens as well. All right. Valerie says this is a cheerfully positive community. Hey, Val, I want to thank you for holding down the fort. Rhonda's back on board. And I want to thank my moderators are here, and they are doing this because they also care about our freedom, about truth, about the direction of our country. And we don't go for labels here. We're not, well, I can only speak for myself. I'm not Republican, Democrat. I guess I am sort of old fashioned and traditional. It's conservative, I guess you could say, in my values, but I go more by issues and truth and facts and reality. That's what I'm all about. So I'm grateful to have you on board. Thank you, everybody. It's really been a rollicking ride. I didn't anticipate to go so long again today, but I wanted to get all the information out there. I might do a couple of shorter videos just highlighting some of these nuggets that you can share with people who still quite aren't getting the facts straight. Thank you, everybody, for being on board. And be sure to get on that free Substack, and you can actually read the data. I have links for you. And then if you find something that is contrary to that, I encourage you to email me, support@thehealthyamerican.org. And otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in